Story 1. My aunt was dating an unemployed man for a while. He was staying in her house rent-free. They got married and were getting ready to go on the honeymoon when the new husband tells her he's not going because he has to take care of his plants at the house. Big fight. My aunt goes on the honeymoon with her sisters instead. She comes home and tries to kick him out of her house, but he refuses to leave. She tries to get the police involved. The man is live streaming on social media how he is being trapped in his own home. The police tell my aunt there is basically nothing they can do, and she can file for eviction after a divorce. The man gets to live in her house with his precious plants for about 3 months until everything legally gets worked out. Story 2. Paralegal here. There are so many crazy divorces, and divorce can bring out the absolute worst in couples. When thinking of reasons a divorce started, this one stands out to me the most. At my last firm, we did general law, which included probate. A couple did their will with our firm. We drafted everything. They were in their mid-70s to early 80s. Married 40 years in total, divorced and remarried once. The husband wanted us to put in his will that his kids get his entire estate, but did not want us to tell his wife. He wanted us to make a secret will and a fake will. The fake will would be signed with her present, and then he wanted us to shred it, and he would come in later to sign the real will. He copied his wife on the email that had all of this information disclosed in it. 2 weeks later, he called us and said he wanted to file for divorce instead. Bonus 1. A previous client was very upset that his wife was cheating on him. She wanted a non-contested divorce and wanted to use my boss specifically because she knew he was a great lawyer. He pretended to go along with her terms and contacted us literally 2 days before his wife and retained us. He said he didn't care how much money the retainer was, but wanted my boss so his wife couldn't have him as a lawyer. He called and paid first, so he won that battle. Story 3. Kind of in the same category, I've had a lot of younger male potential clients come in for divorce consultations with their mother. Then, during the consultation, the mother does 98% of the talking, and it's clear who actually wants the divorce. I usually escort the mother to wait in the lobby while I talk to the son directly, and most of the time he's just there to appease his mother. On a related note, I once had just the mother call for a consultation because she said explicitly she wanted her son to get a divorce. I politely informed her that's not how divorces work. Story 4. Paralegal. A couple got divorced over a cat. The wife called the cat Snowball because of its white fur and only wanted the cat to eat wet food or chicken breast. The husband called the cat Lily, also because of its white fur, and believed it should only eat dry food. These two argued for a year over custody of the cat, but did not care about their human kids, aged 15 months, 4 years, and 6 years old. Story 5. I am not a lawyer, but I have been eager to tell this story for a while. So, this girl I went to school with marries this rich guy from Ohio. She moves in with him and they seem to get along well. 6 months later, she files for divorce. Up to that point, all I had heard from her was how good it was going. Anyway, it turns out her husband had a fetish for urine play. He asked her to urinate on him in the tub. At first, she agreed as she thought it was a one-time thing, but he kept asking for it more and more. She tried to decline respectfully, but he wouldn't take any of the hints. She finally used the tub being too small as a reason. The next day, she comes home with 24 construction workers and their equipment, tearing down the bathroom walls. A week or so later, they finish the bathroom. She comes home to a sign left on the fridge with a note to drink up because she had some watering to do. I do not know what exactly she put down as the official reason in the paperwork, but that was definitely her biggest reason to walk out of that relationship. Oh, I forgot to add. He also wanted to bring a horse to do the deed as well and, at times, asked her to make animal sounds while she stood on top of him. Story 6. My aunt had a case where the wife had glued all of the outdoor hoses together, so he wouldn't spend more time washing his vehicle anymore. When the glue didn't work, she just cut them all up. When he bought new ones, she filed for divorce. Story 7. My 90-year-old client, the husband, and his son retained me to initiate divorce proceedings with his 88-year-old wife. They had been married for 60 years. The wife had recently taken to beating him with his own cane because their daughter poisoned her into thinking he was hiding money from them. The battle came down to husband and son versus wife and daughter. At their first court appearance, my client showed up in an old 1950s-style pinstripe suit and fedora. He was a farmer his whole life, and this was clearly the only suit he owned. He was such a meek and lovely old gentleman. I had to pass my client onto a new lawyer midway through the proceedings because I accepted a job in a different country. But I understand the divorce was eventually granted. Story 8. I represented a pornography actress and webcam model who filed for divorce from her husband, who was also in the pornography and webcam modeling business. He participated in gay pornography on the side because the pay was better. She was hesitant about it but tolerated it because the pay was decent. Both parties had an agreement that it wasn't cheating as long as it was for work. One day, she came home early and found her husband in bed with two men. They were not filming. That was too much for her. Needless to say, the old conservative judge couldn't wrap his head around this situation. Story 9. When I clerked for a judge, we had a week-long divorce trial between a couple. The husband was a wildlife photographer, and the wife was a stay-at-home wife, no kids, who helped remodel the home. Anyway, the husband was mauled by a grizzly bear he was photographing, spent several months in the hospital and rehabilitation, and was served papers shortly after getting out, now without an eye and with severe scarring on his face and side. She wanted half of everything, the non-scarred half at least. Story 10. My dad was a divorce lawyer. He had a client who wanted to divorce her husband for two reasons. One, he did not have enough hair on his chest. He did not drive fast enough. Keep in mind this was in the 70s when chest hair was a bit more important. Story 11. My grandfather's brother was a judge who presided over state-issue marriages from time to time. One couple he married returned 6 months later to confirm the wedding and end their trial marriage. He informed them that there was no such thing and that they had been married for 6 months. They subsequently broke up. Story 12. This is more sad than outrageous, but some of my colleagues specialize in elder law, and more people than you would think get divorced on paper in the United States in order to receive Medicare benefits without having to lose their home. Edit Medicare and Medicaid. Story 13. She was kidnapped in Mexico, and he refused to pay the ransom. Eventually, her family managed to pay, and she was left on the side of the road. It is not outrageous in the sense of petty, but outrageous in how absurd that is. I don't know how much they wanted as ransom, but it was substantial. The conversation between her family and him was about how he had the money liquid, and they had to liquidate investments to get that amount. She may have told me, she may not have. It was something in pesos, and I didn't know the conversion rate. It was all a random number to me. This happened about 7 years ago. He wasn't with her on the trip. She was traveling with cousins and went downstairs alone to get ice cream and wait for them to get ready. I do not know all the details. She was extremely distraught talking about it, and it was not necessary to pry. It was clearly traumatic, and even though I had a million more questions, I left it alone. Story 14. I am an intern, but the judge I work for used to handle divorce cases. He has some crazy stories, but this one is probably the most outrageous, though the divorce was justified. Every morning, this couple would sit in the bathroom together while one of them had their morning routine. One would sit on the toilet and the other on the rim of the bathtub. On this particular morning, the wife was on the toilet and the husband on the edge of the tub. They started to argue about their relationship, and the wife reached down, pulled her tampon out, and flung it at the husband. I am told the tampon stuck for a brief second to his forehead before sliding off. He filed for divorce that same day or the next. Story 15. I knew a guy from a high school job who divorced his wife of 2 months because she would sleep with a nightlight, but he could only sleep in total darkness, as they apparently never lived together until after getting married. He hated her nightlight so much that he would often sleep on the couch instead, but sometimes he would claim the bed for himself and lock her out of the bedroom for the night. This was an eccentric late 40s man working at a Burger King who acted like all the other high school coworkers were his best friends and often told us these weird stories. I'm glad I don't work with him anymore. Story 16. Failed exorcisms. The client had an inner ear condition that caused chronic vertigo, but symptoms could be treated with medication. Her husband was an evangelical who was convinced his wife won. had become possessed and that her vertigo and general crankiness with his methods were evidence of demonic possession. 2. The medication she was taking were enabling the devil to hide inside her. And 3. The only proper recourse was exorcism. He would hide her medications until she got dizzy and then try various methods of exorcism. This included sweating it out, put under blankets while incapacitated and locked in a room full of space heaters, freezing it out, pretty much the reverse with air conditioning, fans, and bags of ice. Surprising it out, he would jump out and scare her like it was the hiccups, but instead of yelling boo, he would recite the Lord's Prayer or Psalms. The final straw was that he tried to surprise it out of her by pushing her down the stairs when they were heading out for dinner. Note, this man was some type of executive and they still went out to dinner after the stairs incident. She asked for a divorce at an Applebee's that night. I have often tried to picture that conversation, as she was adamant that he was a total sweetheart and never acted out of malice or anger. Story 17. I was a legal assistant when this case came in, but this lady divorced her husband of 2 months because he got her an iPad case for her birthday instead of the expensive jewelry she wanted. Story 18. I was going to say that our client was served divorce papers for sending over $500,000 overseas in a scam. He was emailing back and forth with a woman for a period of time, during which he sent the money totaling over $500,000. There were no video calls or anything, just emails. Story 19. My client put his wife in an assisted living facility based on a misdiagnosis, the medication of which caused the wife to be unable to care for herself. While in the facility, my client, surprisingly, started dating another woman and began using hard drugs. He used a lot of money on both of these things. She eventually got off the medication and got better. Suffice it to say, she was not happy about what had transpired. Story 20. A friend of mine divorced his then-wife because she would only speak French when her family came over. She was Spanish, as was her family. To add, her family spoke English, French, and Spanish. He could only speak Spanish and English. She got bored of being married to him. Her family basically talked poorly about him while he was there. It was only when he recorded a conversation while they were there and got it translated that he found out what was going on. Story 21. Wasn't the reason, but it did happen during the course of the divorce. Neither side would follow the court orders. When they had to go back to court, they were fighting over a pistol and the man's grandmother's bowls. I assumed for weeks that these bowls were some sort of heirloom or expensive china. When they finally brought the bowls in to swap, they were just Tupperware. Story 22. Staff attorney for a judge. Not a divorce, but a custody modification hearing. Ex-wife wanted sole legal and physical custody of the kids because the ex-husband was spending all his money on a palm reader/psychic and refused to pay child support. On cross-examination, the ex-wife's attorney got him to admit that he was spending all his discretionary income on this psychic. He said he had spent over $5,000 on readings and other services there. Judges frequently chime in with questions in domestic matters, so my judge asked why he was not paying support as his divorce decree required. His explanation was, the psychic could read that his children were provided for without his money, and he would be able to repay the ex-wife when he takes the children to Mexico permanently to seek great riches there, which my judge read as, my psychic told me to kidnap my kids. In summary, deadbeat ex-husband spent all his money on a psychic rather than child support. Told the judge he intended to kidnap his children. Story 23. My husband's first marriage lasted 6 months. He found out she had been involved with several of his friends, and one of those friends finally felt so guilty that he confessed. My husband actually wanted to work it out if he could, but when he tried to talk to her about it, she locked him out of the house and told him she wanted a divorce. Why did you marry me? He finally asked her. Her response? Because he was the only one she was involved with who could afford her dream wedding. She married him because she wanted a wedding and chose the person who could afford it. Mind you, he wasn't wealthy by any means. He just wishes his friend had felt guilty about it, say 6 months sooner. Story 24. My unpleasant cousin told his wife she had 3 chances to give him a son. A daughter was born first, strike 1. A son was born second. Then they found out the boy can't eat gluten. So, my cousin divorced her and has made no effort to see his kids. I remembered something else he did. He would take off work, and instead of spending time with the babies or her, he'd tell her, "Just act like I'm at work and do all your normal stuff." Then he'd watch TV all day. Disappointing behavior. Story 25. My great-great-grandparents had an interesting case. He was abusive, like pimp her out and then beat her for infidelity levels of abuse. This was the 1910s, though, and in our state, you couldn't initiate a divorce for cruelty. In fact, the only possible grounds for divorce was infidelity. A few times, she tried just leaving him anyway. Once he came home from work and she, plus all 8 of their kids, were just gone. But he always found them, and since they were still married, he had every right to grab the kids and go back home with them. Finally, she moved out and went to live with another man. She flaunted the new guy around town until her no-good husband got embarrassed enough to sue her for divorce on the grounds of infidelity. Although she couldn't read or write, she put her X on those papers the minute he served her. It was a major local scandal, very Catholic community, divorce was rare, but she got what she needed to be safe.